It's 6 o'clock, I think, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance with the flag right back there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's move on to item 2, which is approval of the agenda. Dr. Brennan, do you have any corrections or additions to the agenda?
No corrections.
Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Cynthia. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Bill. Any further questions? See none, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Let's move on to item 3, which is why everybody in the room is here. Celebrating success. We'll start with the classified and certified employees of the quarter. It's on your electronic pages 3, Dr. Brenner.
Go ahead. I'll just let you get set up over there. Tonight's meeting, we have Lee Olson, Secretary at Grand Forks Central High School, who's our classified employee of the second quarter. And we also have Central's leadership team here, Mr. Strandell. And Mr. Strandell, are you going to provide some remarks this evening? Or Mr. Wilbur is. Thank you. Mr. Wilbur, why don't you come on up? Ms. Olson, congratulations and welcome.
Mr. President and members of the board, it's my great pleasure to introduce you, Lee Olson, the Grand Forks Public Schools classified employee of the second quarter. Lee has worked at GFC since 2014 and is a critical piece to our school's day-to-day operations. When we asked fellow coworkers to describe Lee, some comments included things like she's a hard worker and is very dedicated to Grand Forks Central. She has a heart for students and their well-being. She goes above and beyond to make things right for our students and their families. And she's always willing to help and takes on the difficult jobs. She helps fill our subs every morning, and when you have a school with 93 teachers, that can be quite a puzzle to put together, and she takes that on every day for us. The community member who nominated Lee stated that she shows up every day and responds to each and every situation students, parents, teachers bring her way and reaches out to parents, guardians to keep them in the loop. She never says that's not my job. She goes above and beyond for students, staff, and parents. The nominating committee also noted her annual pajama drive. In 12 years, she has collected over 13,000 new pairs of pajamas for individuals in our community. Lee is a positive presence in both our school and community. We are very fortunate to have her as part of our team at Grand Forks Central High School. Congratulations, Lee.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, say a few words.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. I truly love my job. I like going to work every day. I love the kids. I love my bosses, and I love the staff that I get to work with. And I believe that this is a tribute to my mother, who was a secretary for 37 years. And so this is keeping the family legacy alive, and this is for my mom.
Okay, should she stand up?
She's not here. Thank you.
Thank you. And her family and extended family are here tonight, so thank you for being here, all of you.
Next, we have our certified employee of the quarter, Mrs. Carrie Melland, who's an instructional design coach at Discovery Elementary School, and she's going to be introduced by Mrs. Allie Parkinson, principal, and also Vice President and Board Member Amber Flynn will present the plaque. Thank you, Mrs. Parkinson.
As I share some remarks about Carrie Melland, I will say that these remarks are extra special because they are comments that have been shared by her colleagues, many of whom are sitting here in the audience tonight. Carrie is a valued instructional design coach at Discovery School, but this job title doesn't fully encompass the many ways that Carrie supports others in her role as coach. At the root of Carrie's work is the way that Carrie is able to connect with people and make them feel supported at Discovery. She makes connections with all staff members, including classroom teachers, custodians, lunchroom staff, paras, specialists, student teachers. There's no Discovery staff member that she's not a resource for. She celebrates others on her bulletin board, and she's very intentional to give shout-outs to everyone. Carrie attends coaches' meetings and some literacy meetings on top of her many duties and brings ideas back to be shared with Discovery staff. She is dedicated to the Discovery's literacy, or the district's literacy shifts, and is a leader in helping teachers navigate the science of reading by leading trainings, providing support resources, or simply by spending time with teachers to be a listener and to answer their questions. Carrie helps create and facilitate professional development opportunities, and she's the one that leads our professional learning community time on Wednesdays in our building. Carrie navigates tough questions, sometimes concerns, or wonderings that teachers may bring to her on a daily basis. And if she doesn't know the answer, she's the first to tell you that she'll try her best to find out or offer to troubleshoot with you. She's thoughtful and checks in with team leaders, grade level team specialists, and new teachers, always to ensure transparency in our big school. Carrie creates time in her schedule to work directly with students on a daily basis. If Carrie is coaching a teacher on how to best support their student with an intervention, she will often ask to work with that student so that she can provide instructional support for that classroom teacher. Carrie makes time to have conversations with parents to provide updates on student progress as part of our MTSS process, and she also meets with parents to answer their questions about technology, Seesaw, other educational platforms. Although Carrie doesn't have a class of her own, she's willing to teach or co-teach a lesson regarding STEM activities or lead a demonstration on proficiency scales in the classrooms. Beyond the school day, Carrie supports others in many ways. She started the VEX robotics program at Discovery and was a robotics coach, and the impact that she had on this program is the reason why our program thrives today. Carrie is the one to help out with after-school events, and when students tell her that they have a game or a special event, you will then see Carrie standing in the stands, taking time to get to know students outside of the regular school day. Most importantly, Carrie completes her job duties with a positive demeanor and with a smile on her face. No matter what's asked of her, Carrie shows that she is supportive of all Discovery staff by following through and, most importantly, believing in teachers and staff. She wears many hats and has multiple roles in her instructional design coach position, and she fulfills those jobs admirably. Her dedicated work and supportive teachers to reach approximately 100 staff and 550 students every day is appreciated. Thank you, Carrie Melland, for all that you do.
Thank you for acknowledging the efforts that we make. It's a little bit hard to have the spotlight on me, but I think that it's really a reflection of the collective effort that all of us do at Discovery School, and it's everyone from classroom teachers to specialists to our literacy specialist who teaches me something every day, and then all the support staff that we have at MSCC that's just a phone call away. I'm so appreciative of our administrators and everyone else that really looks at everyone's a teacher, everyone's a learner at Discovery. So thank you, and thanks to all my colleagues. And thank you to my family who listens to me lament over all sorts of things that I can't quite figure out, and they just listen and then shake their head and move on. So thank you to them too. Thank you.
Let's move on to item 3B, which is second celebrating success at Grand Forks Central High School on electronic pages 4 through 13. And Mr. Strandell and some other invited guests are going to help us through this. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Lund, Dr. Brenner, members of the board, Ms. Galach, Mr. Baumbach. I'm excited to be here tonight celebrating success at Grand Forks Central High School, and our success is really around changes we've made over the past year, really within our interventions that we provide at Central. Every school can tell you they're providing some level of intervention. I think over the past few months, we're able now to be at this point to look back and see that where we're at today is vastly different than where we were a year ago today at Central High School. I'm going to take us back to the year 2019, which was a time of innocence, wasn't it? And in 2019, we had done a lot of work as a district around Ross Green's idea of an assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems for our students who were at risk. And we had really dug into that work at Central, and our interventions teacher at the time, Ms. Katie Arthur, who's up here with me today, had done a lot of that work with her 9th grade students. And at that point, of course, once COVID hit and life looked different, we were in more of a survival mode than anything else. Last school year, just given the amount of learning gaps and SEL gaps, social emotional learning gaps that students had incurred during COVID, it really accelerated and exacerbated some gaps that were already in place. And it gave us a chance to look at what are the interventions we have, where are there gaps within those interventions, and the idea of, do we have a system in place that's coordinated? And the answer was, we really didn't. We were doing our best. Interventions were really provided on the spot by caring adults, oftentimes a principal and a counselor coming together around a student and trying to figure out what options we had within the building to best serve that student who needed another layer of support. Because we were able to look back, and some of this really was about there are more needs, and the needs are greater for students today than they were in 2019. And for the most part, we were looking at options sometimes that if they were not able to be served within our building, we had to find options outside of our building. And there was a gap there. And through conversations with Ms. Galach and the special education department, we decided upon the idea of trying to create 2 schools within a school at Grand Forks Central High School. And those are up and running this year. And if you're not aware of them, really what we're trying to do is for students who have high anxiety that really impacts their ability to attend school, or whose behaviors, sometimes rooted in anxiety, make it difficult for them to be in school in the traditional setting, we needed to figure out a way to serve them within the building as part of our interventions. So bringing on that program, which is a hefty program, at the same time as we as a school were piloting AVID, and some of you are aware of that, it really became, this is a lot of new things, a lot of changes, and pretty complicated changes to go along with the other interventions that we already had in place at Central High School. So in an effort to really coordinate our interventions and systematize them, they really needed a person, and we didn't need to look too far. If we looked right down the hall at this fine young lady, who was operating an interventions program that was very successful for our 9th grade students, it just seemed like she would be the natural fit to take over this system. We call her the director of interventions. I could call her president of interventions, maybe even executive producer of interventions, because she does it all. But as you know, with most things in our work with young people, the who is just as important as the what sometimes, right? And she has both of those things. So she had a history of great success with students. She's admired by students and faculty alike. So she was just a natural fit for that. So as part of that work, then we brought her on as, we call her the director of interventions, to really oversee all kinds of things, including those schools within a school and the AVID program. So we're here to celebrate not only those new programs, but also the work of Katie Arthur to coordinate those programs and systematize interventions at Central High School. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie so she can talk a little bit more about her work.
All right. So before I share any new information with a group of people who are unfamiliar to me, I always like to do some relational capacity building, which is a great AVID strategy. What it does is it helps keep us all engaged and helps build connections. So if you could play along with me, up on the screen, by the show of hands, 1, 2, 3, or 4, which one would you choose to have to go? I see a lot of 1s, so these are the connections that I'm building with you all. I pick 1 as well. There's some 3s. In our world, we have not seen any 4s, so that's been kind of a key. Let's try this one. If you had to choose, which one has to go? You have some 3s a lot of 3s and some 1s. To me, 4 is just not enough chocolate, so that's why I picked that one. And then finally, we have this one. Which one has to go? Yeah, right? If you had to pick one, there's a lot of 2s here, and I can agree. Yeah, Bill, which one are you picking? Yeah, 2?
Bill and I don't know any of these, so.
Well, thank you for playing along. So what we just did is we created kind of a safe place to have a conversation, to chat about some new information, for me to kind of explain some new programs and to share all the things. So as John mentioned, School Within a School, which I will call a SWIS, is a new program that we've developed. And when we were thinking about the needs of these students that we identified, we had to build a solid foundation. So we thought about our mission and our goal, and that's what we really built off of. So our mission of the program is really to identify and to find those barriers with students that are preventing them from finding success in school, and to remove those obstacles in hopes that we can connect with or increase their resiliency, connectedness to school, and hope for achievement. With that in mind, we've developed a goal of how can we get these students who are identified to be in this program, and then the goal would be to transition them back into a full-time 7-hour regular ed schedule, as well as increase their goals in their social and emotional learning skills. So that was the foundation we built off of. After we did that, we developed a SWIS team, and that team is comprised of 3 teachers and myself and our administrators. Our 3 teachers, Karen McIntyre, who actually taught math for over 30 years and came into our Swiss A program and helped. And then we have Scott Cantrell, who came as a para from Red River, is transitioning over to Central this year. And then Lucas Reeder, who's had a lot of familiarity with our Edmentum platform, which is the academic platform I'll chat about. But these 3 individuals really helped us navigate all the kinks of working through a new program. We collaborated weekly. We had to shift, right, when things weren't working, and they really bought into the mission and bought into the students and the needs of the students, and to identify what they needed and also what was manageable for us. And they truly are the reason why this program is as successful as it is today. So when we talk about the 2 programs, we have Swiss A and Swiss B. So Swiss A, as Mr. Strandell had indicated, is for students who are struggling with anxiety or school avoidance behaviors. And Swiss B is for students who are struggling with those lagging skills or unsolved problems, or some of the behaviors that prevent them from being in a regular ed schedule. So in order to achieve our goals in both of those classes, in both of those programs, we identified an academic platform, which is our Edmentum, the online platform, for students to connect with credit recovery or to stay on track in their credit process towards graduation. And then to meet the goal of growing in their SEL or social and emotional skills, or finding those barriers of what's really causing them to be out of the classroom, we are using 2 curriculums, the Y-Try and the base education curriculum, where students are meeting in small groups or working individually in modules online, and working through finding those barriers. And then also we have our school psychiatrist or psychologist and our school social worker who come in and do group sessions weekly. So they kind of have a natural or a common conversation about some of the barriers that are happening with those students in that classroom. You can see there we've served over 60 students in both programs. There's some hard data there, but I'm going to share with you some of the anecdotal data that I've collected, is that counselors are noticing a less traffic in the counseling office, because typically students who would be in the Swiss A category would do anything to avoid some classes, and so they would often go to the counseling office. And now that they have this safe place to practice some of their skills, they are now going into these classrooms. Similarly, we have school avoidance behaviors of walking the hallways or hiding in bathrooms. That was pretty common with this population of students. And so now some departments are noticing less traffic in the hallways and have credited it to our Swiss programs. So we call that success. And there's still a lot of work to be done and a lot of growth and some kinks, but we're on a great path forward with this new program. Switching gears to another piece of, another thing under my umbrella is AVID. And AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. It's a nationwide program that's been alive a long time. Its mission is really to close the opportunity gap to help students be college and career ready in our society. What we've done at Central is two things. Well, we've done one thing this year and are making plans for another thing next year. The thing that we've done this year is really focused on AVID school-wide. And what that is we are creating professional learning experiences in our building that help us with help us incorporate or expose, practice, model instructional strategies that meet AVID's definition of rigor. And so that's been a huge part of our professional learning at Central. It's also the relational capacity that I built with you all at the beginning. That's an AVID strategy. The next thing that we're looking forward to next year is the AVID elective, and that's a new pathway for us. This AVID elective class is for students who typically would be just fine in high school. They would not be at risk for graduating. They would not be at risk for gaining credit in their classes, but they have unleashed potential. So we want to help them, support them in taking advanced and enriched classes, so more rigorous classes. These students maybe don't know that they have that potential yet. And so we've done a lot of work in recruiting that population of students to start next year at Central in a course called the AVID elective class. In this class, they'll teach explicitly the college and career-going skills. There'll be some tutorial sessions around their points of confusion. And then also incorporated is some team building, guest speakers, and also college field trips. And I'm going to end this portion on knowing that our AVID team is excited to come back and share more with you regarding AVID in the future. Lastly, MTSS. So multi-tiered support systems is what MTSS stands for. And with all these new pathways that we have, or what Mr. Strandell has shared at the beginning, we needed a system or a structure to make sure that we were consistent with where the needs of each student were placed. So I created a framework for us at Central. And as you can see, the foundation is our vision, which is the portrait of a graduate. That is our vision at Central High School. We wanted to make sure that we had a strong foundation, and we built that previously, so it makes this work a little bit easier. We created an MTS team, and what's neat about the MTS team is we have lenses from different pieces around our building. We have our school psychologist, we have our social worker, we have case managers, counselors, principals, myself, sometimes teacher representatives. And what we do is we meet weekly, and we talk about students who maybe there was a MTSS referral form. Teachers or counselors or staff around the building have identified a student who might need, like whatever path they're on right now is just not working for whatever reason. So they've identified those things, and then we talk as a team, and we take all of our different lenses, and we come up with which pathway that we have created would best fit this student. So what that does, it really helps us make sure we're consistent with all students instead of our previous reality of just case-by-case basis. I didn't know what they were doing, but this is the decision we're going to make. So we've really kind of incorporated and implemented this framework, which has been a pretty cool thing to see. So with all of that, all of the good things that's happening, I'm just really happy and thankful to be a part of them. And I'm going to turn it back over to John.
That last frame, if you take a look at that, that's just a complicated system, and we're just at the start of that. But just imagine going really from nothing to that this year. And I think what Katie highlighted, the idea that what used to happen just as circumstances arose on a case-by-case basis now just has so many different viewpoints and areas of expertise contributing to the problem solving for kids that this system just is night and day, as I said earlier, from how we operated a year ago. So again, it needed a push, it needed some ideas, and we needed some people to come together to figure out how this went. The support of Ms. Galatch to help us create this position at Central High School, which is maybe more unique to us. But in the end, it needed Katie Arthur, to be honest with you. That's really what it needed, and she just does an amazing job with it. And there's a lot of momentum and excitement about AVID in our building as well, and Katie's at the head of that too. So we just can't thank her enough or celebrate her enough, which is what we're here to do tonight. Yeah, so thank you.
Ms. Arthur and Mr. Strandell, thank you for a wonderful presentation. I'm going to open it up to any board members or other administrative individuals who have questions or comments. Go ahead, Monty.
Well, I'm looking at the last page, you guys, of your MTSS framework, and I just want to say thank you. I know how hard all of that is, and this is pretty impressive. And the fact that you're doing that with with student-centered achievement in mind and helping those kiddos get back on the right track, I just applaud you. That is just overwhelming, and it looks like the left and the right hands are working together, and so thank you all very much. It looks really, really fabulous, so thank you.
Other questions or comments? Go ahead, Amber.
As I look at some of this, I would start to think about one of our other high schools, Community, and thinking about that there may be some overlap of support needs that those individuals might need or want as they are looking for other options. So how would you explain it to someone saying, does this take the place of a community high school, or how does it connect together, or, how do they work in concert with each other? And then my second part is, obviously this is kind of, we're piloting this and this is at Grand Forks Central, but be remiss to say that maybe at Red River, these same things might be needed. And so what is maybe the path then for expanding throughout the district?
Sure. So to answer your first question, Amber, community is part of the pathways, right? When we talk about different pathways a student is on, and that path might change as well, all depending upon the response to the interventions that are provided. But for some students, that's the best place for them to receive a diploma, the best way to receive a diploma, or earn a diploma, I should say. So I don't know that I would say community is part of the intervention plan. That they're not necessarily operating in silos. It's just one of the pathways a student might be on. And as far as other schools replicating sort of the work that we've done, we're certainly open to sharing the MTSS framework. And many schools have an MTSS framework that probably doesn't look the same as Central's, but the idea behind it probably is powerful to people who are looking to advance theirs.
Catherine, would you want to comment about the district-wide thing?
Yeah, I can. So everything John said is true, and I want to thank both of you for being here and progressing the concepts that you have at Central. It really has made an important impact on that building and on the district in general. Dr. Arison and I have been in conversations about that. They do have a school within a school program that operates more along the line of the school within a school A. They have recognized, again, I think as a direct result of some of the recovery that we're still realizing from the pandemic, that there's likely a need for a school within a school B program there as well. Chris and I were talking about that literally last week, about looking into developing that model, and he's on the search right now for the right fit. We can have the greatest ideas in the world, but at the core of that, as John mentioned, in regards to Katie, you need people who have a passion, who look at student behaviors as communication, and are willing to work with them on whatever those skills, those lagging skills are that they have. And that's not the cup of tea for every person, but when you find those people, it makes an incredible impact on the lives of our young people. And they are in our building right now. Many of them are just teaching or operating in a different capacity. So he's on the lookout for the right fit there to see what he can put together for next year.
Catherine, would you mind commenting just a little bit about AVID and the other high schools?
Absolutely. So AVID, as you're aware, is a program or more of a framework that we're bringing into our district writ large. And there's a multi-year plan in which we're rolling in the next level and the next level and the next level of school. The pilot schools are Grand Forks Central, Valley Middle School, Lake Agassiz Elementary School. And Dr. Tack is actually in the audience here, and next year we are onboarding an additional 5 elementary schools. Is that correct? And the year after that, there's a plan, a progressive plan, as those students move up through the system to onboard the next school and the next school. That said, all of our schools have participated in at least 2 full days, their leadership teams have, of AVID training, so that they understand that framework is designed to improve the opportunities for all of our students and to close the equity gap. And so people are kind of chomping at the bit to get it in their buildings more formally. And in the meantime, we are letting these people forge ahead and serve the kids in front of them now.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Go ahead, Cynthia.
So mine is just kind of a more technical, just so that I understand on this 32 students served column on that page. So are the 6 students that transferred out then the 6 students, and you may have said this and I may have missed it, are they then the same 6 students that added more regular ed classes?
No, so the students who transferred out could have been transferred to community, they could have transferred to a placement or transferred outside our district. So the 6 students that added more regular ed classes, they stayed in our building. And they just added more regular ed classes to their schedule so that they're on the right path to our goal in achieving that they would meet or hopefully get to that goal of having full 7 hours a day of regular ed classes. So when they're in the Swiss program, I did not mention this may be part of the confusion. They could be in there from anywhere from 1 hour a day to 4 hours a day, or it could be 3 or 4 hours a day, right? So it's not all day. We do not have a student in there all day.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? If not, Katie and John, thank you so much. Have a good evening. And you can sure stay through the whole meeting, or you can leave. It's up to your choice. Thanks. Thank you to my colleagues who pointed out that I skipped 1A, so we're going to go back on the agenda to 1A, which is the reading of the school board meeting norms on electronic page 2. Bill, I think you've got this.
Be prepared, be on time, value and respect each other, exercise thoughtful deliberation and conversation, be professional at the board table when visiting with the general public, speak up when the norms are not being followed, advocate on behalf of students, and keep the community in mind.
Thank you, Bill. Let's move on to item 4A, which is the minutes from January 23rd. They're all on electronic pages 14 and 15. Did anybody note any needs for addition or corrections to the minutes? See none, can I get a motion and a second?
Second.
Motion by Bill and a second by Cynthia. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 5 is public comments. I don't have any blue cards for comments today, so let's move on to item 6, which is superintendent's recommendations for discussion. 6A is the seal of a biliteracy update on electronic pages 16 through 24. Catherine.
Thank you, Dr. Lunn and board members. So here with us tonight are world language teachers, Ms. Emily Perrell from Red River High School and Ms. Cynthia Larson from Grand Forks Central High School, who will inform you about the North Dakota Seal of Biliteracy. It's an award program designed to celebrate high school students who demonstrate proficiency in more than one language. More than half of the nation recognizes students in this manner, and Grand Forks Public Schools will be adding its name to the list of North Dakota school districts that currently do the same. Ms. Perrell and Ms. Larson will brief you on the program's history, how students earn either a silver or gold award, and the benefits of encouraging students to become multilingual. Building administrators approved adding the North Dakota Seal of Biliteracy recognition to the list of prestigious awards students may earn upon graduation from Grand Forks Public Schools, beginning with this year's graduating cohort. So at this time, I'd like to pass the microphone over to the fine ladies in front of you right now.
Cindy Larson. Bonsoir, je m'appelle Cindy Larson. I am the French teacher at Grand Forks Central, and I'm here with my colleague, Emily.
Yep, I'm Emily Perrell, and I teach Spanish at Red River.
Good. Okay, so we're here to just present on the North Dakota Seal of Biliteracy, and it's a new award here that we are going to be starting and rolling out this spring. And really, the Seal of Biliteracy started back in 2008. It was in California, and the idea spread across the United States, and currently every single state, except for South Dakota, because they're currently in the process of adopting it, has a program, a Seal of Biliteracy program, that's sponsored by their Department of Education. So that is what the Seal of Biliteracy is. It really is to honor students who speak English to a certain proficiency level, and then an other language. So students are actually able to earn multiple seals if they have a level of proficiency in multiple other languages. And there is also a socio-cultural competency portion of it that is decided by the district.
Yes, exactly. So really, the state of North Dakota has implemented the seal of biliteracy in 2019. And so we've, a little thing called COVID kind of put us behind, but I think that we'll hopefully be able to start offering it now. So the students need to be able to show that they have mastered competency in English. Okay, yes, our level, so there's silver and gold. So their English level is either presented with their English language arts portion of the ACT of a 16 or a 19, and then also the access test, which would be more for our EL learners. With the other language, the test that we have believed to be the best to prove would be the APPLE, and that would be something that we as the teachers would figure out a testing schedule to have with our students within that other test as well. So those are the two parts that are really on the students, and then the other part is the sociocultural competency. And that would be participating in culturally relevant activities and then doing a sort of a reflection essay. And then also within Grand Forks Public Schools, we currently have a summer travel program that's available to have that within a reflection essay. And, you know, we're kind of working out some of the kinks and rubrics with scoring for that, but it's also making sure that sometimes it's kind of hard for that socio-cultural competency and then a reflection essay to kind of go together, but DPI has stated that we need to have the socio-cultural competency, so it is up to us as the district to figure out how best we can help our students to demonstrate their understanding of other cultures in the process.
So just kind of overstates like our two options or two pathways to meet the district's sociocultural competency requirement. And again, COVID kind of put a little kink in our plans of having kids go out and experience cultures in the community, but we're hoping to get back on track and encourage, really, the goal is to encourage kids to go and experience cultures outside of their home and to get some exposure to that. Okay.
So the biggest thing is, what is it's going to cost, because that's what we always hear. The English tests are already being offered within our district with the access test and also the ACT. And then with our other language assessments, which would be the APPLE, the cost is $20 to be covered with the students, but sometimes we do have other programs that are available to help students who are in need and might need some assistance to cover that cost. And we, as teachers, will work out. We will also talk to our other colleagues within our buildings to identify what are the students who maybe are not in my class, but would also qualify because of their heritage learning and those kinds of things. And then also the district can do different supports or different awards, but DPI will send a seal that is either silver or gold that the student can choose to affix to their transcript if they want to.
The next steps, we actually are in the process of finalizing our application. North Dakota Department of Instruction has altered some of the information that they'd like us to collect from students, so we're updating our application, and then the next thing will be to roll it out to our seniors. We've already spoken and had conversations, and we have some kids that we think are real good candidates for this award, so we're excited to try to get some kids, get the APPLE test done, and see what they have to say about in their essays. So yeah, that's kind of
Exactly. That's what we have.
So any questions for these fine people about the seal of biliteracy?
Go ahead, Cynthia.
So I would assume, given your thank you here on the last page, that you're thinking of Somali and Nepali as well?
yes, there are any language other than they have to meet English to a certain proficiency and then any other language. And the APPLE, if the APPLE doesn't test that language, we will go out and find one that does. But the APPLE offers, which is the second language test we're going to be using, they have, I don't even know, 26 or 28 different languages, and if it is not one that we need, we will find one.
So can you describe, like, what's the benefit to the student?
So the benefit really for a lot of universities are starting to offer credit So a kid could come in with, and it just shows that they have a certain level, language proficiency, and the college or university might say, okay, that's equal to our level 101, 102, here's 8 college credits. It shows for employers as well, if a student meets a certain level of proficiency for a language. Some colleges are using it just for placement. For UND, it will help place a student, and UND offers something called lateral credit, where they might get placed in a 201 class, and if they complete that successfully, UND will actually offer and give them the credit for 101 and 102. So for some, it kind of really depends on which college or university a student is going to.
Go ahead, Amber.
Does the other language also recognize ASL for the biliteracy?
That I do not actually.
That is a great question, and I can look that up and get back to you, Amber.
Okay.
Yeah.
Monty, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. I just think it's so wonderful to promote language skills of all sorts to our children, right? And that's just such a gift to be able to speak 2 languages. I'm in awe of you to be able to do that. And I know our German-American partner schools are here right now, so I just think that's just wonderful. So thank you very much for promoting that and piloting it and doing all the work to get a rubric in place and promoting it to your students and to students that are in the buildings. I'm sure you're working with Ivona, and I just think it's a nice way to applaud someone who has that skill. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Ryan.
So the language, like, I know Spanish, German, and French are offered for high school. So, like, she mentioned, like, Nepali, and, like, I'm seeing, like, other languages that I don't recognize that are obviously not taught. Like, so it doesn't have to be a language learned throughout their high school career. Someone can, like, someone that's not from America can use that language and just take that Apple test and receive that credit?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's they have to have a certain level of proficiency too. So it's biliteracy, so it's going to mainly be focused on reading and being able to do that. But if a student, their family speaks Arabic at home or whatever, there are tests available for that. So I think that's kind of what we view as probably going to be the most challenging part, is making sure that all students who might qualify are found, because some of these students might not be a part of the EL classroom, they might not be in our classroom. So just making sure that we do our due diligence to get the communication out to students to know that it is an opportunity for them.
Yeah, I think that's, Cynthia was pointing on that, but that's something that, I look at my patient population, they probably speak 30 different languages. I mean, that's their primary language, because they came from other parts of the world, and I think that's important that they know about this program. I think the other feather in the cap is graduate schools look at that. I mean, I've been involved in medical school stuff. They look at how well-rounded, not just are you a science nerd, but are you well-rounded? Were you into music? Were you into that? And I think that looks good on applications for certain things, so.
And I think especially, combining the fact that it is a language, but it's also some of that cultural competency, it's really honoring people's experiences, whether they are, an experience of going to something in the community and being a part of that, or if it is your family's experience or, your friend experience. So I think that that's a really big portion, that being able to speak another language is more than just knowing another language, but it's also a combination of different experiences.
And I think the American Sign Language thing is something worth looking into, and if they don't, that we should push DPI about that, because that's a big
Exactly,
population.
and we'll look at that. It's just, I know with some of the practice tests that I've done, it's always been a speaking part, but that's very easy to do, a video component, but that is an easy enough thing for us to figure out, so.
Amber.
I'm curious about maybe some outreach to our military friends, because I know that there's some students who come and maybe they've been living in Italy and they've learned Dutch, but we don't have Dutch here. So, again, just all the pathways where we can identify those students.
Yeah, exactly. And we have some of that ready to go, so we're good.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Is the Apple test just oral? Because I'm thinking about some of the families I work with, they don't know their language in written format, but they're fluent. So do you know, is it just is it a written and?
Yeah, it is a combination. There's some reading portions, there's speaking portions, so it does kind of test the four modalities of language.
Other clarifying questions or comments? Thank you both for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank
Have
you
a
for
good
the
evening.
time.
Yes, thank you.
Let's move on to item 6B, which is a legislative update on pages 25 and 26. Dr. Brenner.
Thank you, Dr. Lunn. I'll go through these rather quickly, starting with House Bill 1199. By the way, it feels like a really awkward transition when we've just been celebrating so much wonderful information about the school district. Not that this isn't wonderful, but 1199 is good news that Governor Burgum did sign into law effective immediately, the $10 million grant that we've been waiting for that will match the $11.5 million that we raised locally. And the board is acutely aware that we're still about $9 million short with inflationary situation. So there is hope and optimism in Bismarck after speaking with certain legislators that they will try to get that inflationary cost across the finish line without us having to go to a bank, even if it's at 1% or something other than that. So more to come on that. This certainly moves the project along to get us to the design phase with JLG, and it would be our goal to get shovels in the ground late this summer. House Bill 1312 is the online mental health suicide prevention training for our staff. Just as a refresher, we're required every 2 years to undergo 8 hours of training. And so this just, puts this, it continues to put this in front of us with the online training piece. So we are certainly supportive of that. State payment for school safety, House Bill 1337. As I said in my memo, this one is all over the map. There was an introduction that in the bill's first written format, it was school districts should spend 5% of their annual revenue on safety and security. Well, in a $114 million budget, that's a whole chunk of change that we're not spending. But we are spending enough money on school resource officers and other safety and security features in our school district. So the second iteration of the bill was, well, let's change it to 5 mills, but then there's a lot of conversation about we already have the 5 mills that we could put before the voters and attract some revenue that way. That isn't going anywhere. So there's really no resolution yet, other than I can say that there continues to be chatter around what this might look like. As a matter of fact, I think there was a new iteration today, and I didn't have time to take a look at it. But I think it has more common sense with the most recent iteration. Senate Bill 2223, this is good news for our Grand Forks Air Force Base, District 140. This bill increases the scope of residency requirements for military installation school board members. In other words, the way this bill is introduced, a board member would not have to physically live on the base. We've had difficulty filling our school board seats on base with people who actually live on base. The good news right now is we do have a very active 5-member board on base. And if this would go into law, this gives some flexibility for if Ariel decides, she's still our board member, she's got 2 years left, and she moves off base because they want to retire here, she's still eligible to be a board member. So I think it's a good win-win for us. And there's some also language in there that we still want to have base residency as a requirement for a couple of the positions. I think that's important as well. So there's some flexibility. There's good news. Senator Scott Meyer has introduced that bill, and you can see the type of support that he's received. House Bill 1251, I won't even go over it. I'm happy to say that this is dead. It's now done. We won't talk about it anymore unless some weird bill is introduced. Even the person who actually introduced the bill, representative out of Minot, basically he was withdrawing the bill as it was written, as he wrote it. So that's good news for all of our rural school districts with a student population K-12 under 475. It would really have forced consolidations of school superintendents, and it would have really been the loss of local control at the local school board level. What we're keeping our eye on this week is House Bill 1376, And this is about students enrolling in other school districts other than where they live, where they reside, how virtual instruction comes into play. There's some advantages and disadvantages, and we're just kind of monitoring that because there have been some interesting open enrollment proposals sort of through homeschoolers where they've wanted to enroll in a virtual academy elsewhere and have the school districts lose their foundation aid payment to follow a student. And we've got some of the larger school districts who are really monitoring that. That really doesn't apply to this one. I just want you to know that that's a different conversation that is out there. So I think for us, sometimes we have students who might leave us during their junior year, and sometimes it has to do with athletics. But this would be possibly one way where they could remain our student instead of either homeschooling or open enrolling somewhere else and then coming back for graduation. So there might be some advantages to this, so we're tracking this one this week. And there's just a lot of activity that we're monitoring. So that's what I have for you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Dr. Brenner? Go ahead, Cynthia.
So I didn't know if Monty had anything prior to, because I was going to ask some questions, but if she's
Well-
raising some.
Well, I was going to, go ahead with the questions, and I was going to turn to Monty after
Okay,
that.
I don't have any questions for Dr. Brenner, except.
Okay, well, that's,
Well, I have, so I pulled out the legislative update for, from the North Dakota School Boards Association, and I just wondered about some of these bills, if you're tracking these. Is this an appropriate time to ask that?
I don't have that in front of me, but I have it on my desk with lots of them highlighted, so I probably wouldn't be able to respond directly, but I can take a swing at it.
Well, actually, I think that one of the bills, HB 1532, I believe this is the one that's been in the news about, with Melissa, who's not here tonight, but just this whole question about giving money to private schools and public schools, so you probably can comment on that.
That's the voucher bill that we would oppose, yes.
So you're tracking that bill. I just was curious because these are the ones you said you were tracking, and so I was like, well, that would be one that I would think that we would be tracking.
Yeah, these are the ones I just highlighted for tonight, but yes, we are tracking the voucher bill. And it's likely one of us will be in Bismarck testifying against it.
Okay, and then the others that I had questions about, well, this one is, I think, creating a non-public school and home education program property tax credit. It's Senate Bill 2369. So I didn't know, you might want to follow up with that, with the board on a Friday focus or next time or whatever. And then the other ones that I've been kind of paying attention to and would just be curious, it was heard on 124, HB 1522, prohibiting a school district from talking to a student with their, quote, perceived or expressed gender.
We are tracking that, yes.
And lastly, Senate Bill 2231, oh, that's very similar, relates to preferred pronoun discriminatory practices. So that's passed the Senate 34-12, it said. So those were the ones I was concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you.
and maybe Dr. Brenner didn't state it clearly, but I think they are tracking all of the bills that affect the school district. He was just highlighting some of them for today's meeting, if I'm correct. Monty, did you have anything else you wanted to add from your perspective?
Sure. I think the meetings on Friday from 3 to 4 that I attend, it's just kind of rapid fire, and they just talk bill numbers and they just give a quick synopsis. So I try to take notes, and then I apologize, I forgot my notes at work today. So, but here I can tell you that this week the things that I think are going to be very interesting for us, House Bill 1398, which is the Computer Science and Cybersecurity Instruction Bill, which means that they would add a graduation requirement for that. And so that will be something for us to watch. Apparently, though, we talked about it a little bit when I was in my meeting, and I was worried about the idea of our district and all districts having to secure a computer science teacher, and apparently that has been amended. And so we wouldn't have to worry about that, but I sincerely apologize that I can send you my notes. I know that that was amended, and many, many districts were concerned about having to hire someone with that kind of ability to teach that. The other, and that will be heard tomorrow at 9 o'clock in terms of a hearing if you're tuning in. And then on Wednesday at 9:15 is that grants to schools for student meals, in case you're following that one. That's $14.91. And then, private school vouchers is on Wednesday as well, and that hearing should also be at 9:15, and that's in the House Appropriations Committee. So, I don't know if those help you, but yeah, I think we've all done. I think just to pay attention and to continue to write to our representatives when we are hearing things that seem that they would maybe cause more confusion than good, would be just really good to keep your eyes and ears open for that, right? To guide people through that process and what it looks like actually in policy and procedure are often two different things, right? And in the classroom, what does that look like in Bismarck? And then what does that actually translate to in the classroom are sometimes two different things. And so if we can provide that perspective, I think it's really, really good of us to do that and helpful for our students and our teachers, so.
Thank you, Monty. I'm going to ask you and Dr. Brenner a question because there's so many bills that are important for education. I don't think there's any way we'd ever be able to talk about all of them here. And we all get the legislative update, the weekly updates. If a board member has a question or a concern or a comment, is it okay for them to reach out to you two individually? Because somebody may have a passion I might have a passion for a particular bill, but there's no way we can talk about all of them here. So is that okay? Are you guys willing to allow the rest of the board to reach out to you?
Yes.
Ditto. Yeah, I'm happy to. And Alexis Baxley, who leads the meetings, she's so well-versed in all of the bills, and she just works so hard for the School Board Association. So she's often on with the attorneys that are also in the School Board Association, and they're very well-versed in all the bills. They can tell you who voted how and all that kind of stuff. So I would be very happy to do that, because oftentimes it's hard to keep up, so.
Thank you for both your willingness to do that. That'll make it easier for us to be able to reach out to you. Let's move on to Superintendent's recommendations for action. 7A is the consent agenda on electronic pages 27 through 49. Do I have a motion and a second?
I move.
We have a motion by Monty. Do we have a second? Second by Bill. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Let's move on to item 7B, which is waiver of years of experience and appointment for Laura Pradhan on electronic page 50. Dr. Brenner.
Thank you, Dr. Lunn. This one is fairly self-explanatory. This music position, 6th grade at Valley Middle School, has actually been open all year this year. So this would be a hire for the 23-24 school year. We're just trying to get out ahead of some things with our early hiring. And as noted in the negotiated agreement, does allow the superintendent to bring this to the board for approval to exceed the 11 years of experience. And in this case, Ms. Pradden has 15 years of experience, and we would recommend that for approval. She would be placed at the master's step 16 at a total cost of $61,388.
Clarifying questions or comments for Dr. Brenner? Go ahead, Cynthia.
It's amazing to me, that's all I want to say, that this is a hard-to-fill position, because there were years when there were more than enough people to fill these positions. I just couldn't resist saying that.
Seeing no other questions, do we have a motion and a second? Motion to approve. Motion by Cynthia. Second by Bill. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Let's move on to 7C, which is Finance Committee Report, consideration of signage at the two high schools. on electronic pages 51 through 53. Bill, I think you're starting off with this.
Yeah, we did meet with the principals, and it was mainly, well, we met about two things. We talked a little bit about the central pool, and we just asked the administration to get better numbers on the long-range fix for the pool, so we can have that come back to the finance committee and see where we are, and hopefully Dr. Brenner can work on getting a sponsor or some naming rights or something to help us with the cost to that. But looking more towards the $3 million fix, so we do have a permanent solution to, at least for practice and dual meets, until a huge pool is built, if it does get built. Second thing, we talked about the signs. There are electronic signs at both schools. I think Central does not have one currently, and Red River has the old sign that's out front. And what we had talked to them about is they asked if we would, as a school board, purchase the two signs for them, and then they would do some sell sponsorships for it, and then the money would go back in, because they don't have PTOs or PTA, in the schools. What we did with them is we kind of made a agreement with the finance committee that we would split the cost. So when they do sell the sponsorships, the 50% of their up to the cost of half the sign would come back to the school district. So we'll share the cost with both of them. So our recommendation is as it was written there, to just approve the purchase and the installation of the two signs, one at Red River, one at Central, with a 50-50 revenue split until the payback of 50% of the total cost of both signs is done. And then after that, then they would retain the money for the sign on that. So I think they can, at West Fargo, I think, if I remember right, they're close to $24,000 a year they earn off of their signs. And I think Fargo South, and they were about 12,000 in that order. So it's something for them to put back into their school. And one of the examples, they brought in some instructors for a special, I'm trying to think who we brought in, a speaker for the staff, and that they could use it that way, or for the students to use it. So our recommendation from the finance committee is to approve the purchasing of those signs on a split with the two high schools.
Brandon, you have any other comments you want to make about that?
No, I thought Bill did a great job explaining that. I'd be happy to answer any questions about if there's further details you'd like to know.
Further clarifying questions or comments from board members? I just had one. It sounded like the monies going back to the schools would be the responsibility of the principal or administration to decide where they best felt that monies were needed. Okay. Any other clarifying questions or comments? Go ahead, Ryan.
This might be a silly question, but how do you make the money off of the signs?
It would be just like the park board does on the signs that are on the fence. So what they do is sell that sign to Jarrell Sports Center for 3 years at $1,000 a year. So then they would get that back. These will have, it's a digital board, which will have what events are going on at night or what's coming up in the school, but then down the side would have sponsorships. So they would try to sell 4 or 8 sponsorships on those signs. And where they sit, if you think about where they sit, Red River sits on 17th Avenue South, which is an extremely busy road, and Central's their sign will go on North 5th Street, which goes right down that way. So they both sit in good spots, and I'm sure there's sponsors from the schools, businesses that are at the school will be the sponsors, but that's what they'll go out and sell.
There are no silly questions. Those are the most important ones to get answered. That's what I tell my parents, patients. So go ahead, Amber.
I just think the central pool conversation, the 3 million price tag seems big, but I think that this is a huge benefit to the school district, and I think we can only control what we can do regarding a pool situation in our community. And so if we wait, for the city to do something, or, UND to do something, I think we're only going to be waiting and missing out on opportunities for our students. So while it has a little bit higher price tag, I fully support the more permanent solution and getting a pool online sooner than later for our community. I think there's also an opportunity for, and I don't know, Bill, if you could speak to this and what was talked about, but revenue dollars for leasing the space from outside groups if we have a working pool in our community as well.
Yeah, we did talk about that, that there's lap swimming could be in the pool, there could be lessons within that pool. I'm not real familiar with Central Pool, but it does have a diving bay, so you can have a meet there, at least a dual meet at the pool. And I think the talk of, I don't know if you've seen the council meeting the other night where the university is moving forward with their multiple buildings that'll be taking the existing pool away by 2024, that the new pool that would be built, if they do go far enough on the new pool, I'm sure that's at least 3 to 4 years or 5 years away, because they have to first pass a way of paying for it, and then they have to figure out who's going to run it, and then they're going to have to, and then for us, the biggest thing is have a central pool. The teams can practice there without a rental fee. I think in a large complex, your rental fee may be pretty substantial for what we can save by keeping kids at home. Plus, then they have a home place to swim. At least the central kids do. The Red River kids still have to travel away, but, you know, they do that. So that's why we felt the pool was important too.
You know, with having to pass this eventually, it's going to come back to this board at some point, the pool stuff, and it'll either come back to the Facilities Committee of a whole of the school board, or it'll go through finance and then come to the school board. Either way, it's going to end up in this body for final determination after we get more information, so. Oh, go ahead, Cynthia.
I feel like I just need to say one thing more about the pool, and that is, I want to make sure, and I think I've already told Dr. Brenner this, and Brandon knows this as well, that we just want to make sure that the pool is viable before we, you know, we in the committee asked for pool, I have the wrong word, I always call them experts, and I know that's not what they are, but pool experts, to make sure that it still works, because if a pool has been closed for as long as it has, it could be that it isn't going to be functional. So before we talk about a $3 million price tag, I just think that that's very important.
Dr. Brenner?
Yes, we're going to have it inspected, top to bottom, the pool itself, the swimming bay.
And the other thing for me is, you know, I look at, I know it's kind of a different setting, but the University of Minnesota Morris has a pool, and it's shared by the city, the park, the university. It's right on the U of M Morris campus, and it's an open rec center. So if Grand Forks could work together with those entities, it would just be, I think, a great thing for the city.
So the recommendation is to approve the signage for Central and Red River at, I don't even have it in front of me anymore, was it 64,000? 65 each. Okay, so can I get a motion and a second? You'll move approve. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, Josh. Any further clarifying questions or comments? If not, the motion is to approve the expenditures as outlined. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Let's move on to 7D, which is Prospective Valley Middle School Special Election Referendum Date, electronic page 54. Brandon.
Thank you, Dr. Lund, members of the board. As the cover memo just kind of goes into, we've talked for some time now about Valley Middle School, and just last year we had set a referendum date of September 27, 2022. Ultimately, that was delayed to do some further due diligence. At this point, that due diligence has been done. Icon Architect Group and Cunningham Architect Group have walked through buildings and refined our capital maintenance needs as a district. And further, they have surveyed the community, gauging the interest and support of options for Valley Middle School. With this new information, it comes with a recommendation from the administration that we select Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 as a prospective referendum date. The rationale for this is that survey came back with strong support. This time frame would still have school in session and not close to any holidays to interrupt. This would also be the first of possible community referenda across our community this year. And further, retirees would have come back and be in the community to participate in that vote. Should the board approve this recommendation, the next step would be to bring back a resolution and a ballot language that would be developed and bring back to the board to actually formalize that. We need a couple more details to do that just yet, exactly the scope of that project and the dollars encouraged. So the board will be a part of the conversation as far as the scope of the referendum, but by choosing this date, it will help all things in planning and setting aside venue needs, etc. So our administrative recommendation is to select Tuesday, May 16th, 23 as the Valley Middle School special election referendum date.
So just to be clear, all we are approving tonight is the date. We're not approving anything regarding scope.
Correct.
And I think that early on, there was some thought about having it on May 9th. I don't know if board members remember that, but that's the Kenny Chesney concert at the Alara Center, and we didn't want to compete with all our voters voting and getting mixed up with the concert goers. So that's why we picked the 16th too as well. So any further clarifying questions or comments? Go ahead, Cynthia.
I think this just puts us on track for having more information at all of the next meetings so that we're really getting this out there. Because it's amazing to me how many people still don't know about this.
Yes, and we've got an education plan that's being worked on by multiple people, including Dr. Brenner, Tracy, the ICON people, and that will, because we do need to educate a lot of the public about this so they understand what the issues are and what our approach is. So I agree. Any other clarifying questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the date for Tuesday, May 16th.
Motion by Cynthia, do we have a second? Second by Monty. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to 7E, which is the agreement between the two districts. That is on electronic pages 55 through 58. In the cover memo from Dr. Brenner talks about that we met. I believe it was a 6-minute meeting. I didn't count the seconds, but it was in the 6 or 7 minute range. It was a very short meeting. Basically, the updated contract updates the dates and then adds on page 57, the boards will establish committees with representation from each board. We changed from facilities committee to facility committees of the whole, but that was the extent of the changes for the contract. I'll entertain any clarifying questions or comments. If not, can we get a motion and a second to approve the updated contract? Motion by Josh. Do we have a second? Second by Bill. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Let's move on to item 7F, which is policy review, electronic pages 59 through 107. Dr. Shab.
Okay, thank you. Tonight we have quite a few policies on first readings, but first, for information only, is the FDI-AR transgender and gender non-conforming student procedure policy. That's in your packet for information. There's no board action needed on that. We did meet and talk about it. So there's, for this next one, these are all first readings, and I think we can go ahead and do these all at once, unless there's someone, and then if there's a question about any of them. These are pretty straightforward policies. So we have First reading of gifts and bequests. I'm not going to read all those HCAFs. Well, I will. Food serving service procurement policy, HCAG purchasing cards, HCAD purchasing computerized data systems, DKBB contracted staff resignations, and request for release from contract. That is a new policy for us. Well, all of these are, but GAAE, critical race theory, FFD, possessing weapons. This was amended by the North Dakota School Boards Association. DEBJ, unauthorized purchases. HCAB, bidding requirements and procedures. HCBA, vendor conflict of interest disclosure. HCBB, sales calls and demonstrations. HCBC, fair employment clause and contracts. HDA, revenues from investments. And HEAA, line item transfer authority. I'd make a motion to approve on first reading those policies.
Do we have a second? Then we can open it up for discussion. Second by Monty. Do we have any discussion on any of those proposed policies? I guess I'm looking at the three non-policy review committee members because the three of us spent 2.5 hours on this. Doesn't sound like it. Do we have a motion and a second? Oh, we have a motion and a second, right? Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and vote then. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Back to you, Dr. Shab.
Okay, the next one, we are asking for this to be expedited since they need to use this policy right away. It's the purchasing policy. It's on page 82 of your electronic packet. So we would ask for just passage with one reading, which is allowed by policy BDA, and it is HCAA, purchasing. I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion about policy HCAA? Hearing none, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Dr. Shab.
Next ones, we're rescinding these policies. One, preparation of budget document. We're not replacing that one. And purchasing procedures, 3310. I make a motion to rescind those two older policies.
We have a second. We have a second. Any further clarification or questions about rescinding those two policies? Seeing none, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. And last one, Dr. Shab.
Okay, so the last one is the bulk of the packet, which is to approve these individuals and entities as part of FGAE 8, and they would be allowed to receive student directory information as allowed by policy and or the law. So we went through the list pretty carefully, and it's in your electronic packet starting on page 87. So if you recall, we did a few of these earlier, and this is, I don't think we'll be bringing more this year, but there could be more.
And these are vetted heavily by the administrative personnel that are involved in these areas, including the cabinet reviews it as well, yeah. Did you make a motion?
I did, but I will move
Okay.
approval of the parties approved to receive data as written in FGA-E8.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second by Monty. Any clarifying questions or comments from the other three board members? Okay, seeing none, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Shab. Let's move on to item 7G, which is GFEA petition for consideration as representatives on electronic pages 108 through 115. Administrative recommendation is to receive the petition from GFEA. It'll be posted for 14 days, and then we'll come back in 2 weeks to approve that petition. It's pretty straightforward. So can I get a motion and a second for the GFEA petition? Do I have a second? Second by Bill. Anybody have any clarifying questions or comments regarding the GFEA petition? Seeing none, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to 7H, which is Grand Forks Principal Association, which is the same scenario as the teachers, except it's with the principals, that we would receive the petition, and it'll be posted for 14 days, and then we'll come back on the 27th. Can I get a motion for approval of the GFPA petition? Motion by Josh. Do we have a second? Second by Bill. Any further clarifying questions? Seeing none, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. And 7I is the Grand Forks Directors Association. So the third group, electronic pages 20 and 21. And administrative recommendation is to receive the petition and then posting the notice as per state law. Can I get a motion and a second? Motion by Josh, second by Bill. Any further clarifying questions or comments? Maybe Dr. Brenner or even Cindy, before we vote on this, the only thing new this year is the members are listed there. Is that new in state law, or why are we seeing the members? At least I don't remember from previous years.
Yes, that would be new. That would be new in the Century Code.
Thank you. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Let's move on to item 8, other. 8A is announcements. Dr. Brenner.
I just have one. We're watching the weather. We've got some weather moving in Tuesday evening. Wednesday morning could be difficult, but I'm not saying, Ryan and Maggie, you can sleep in just yet.
Catherine, any updates? Brady, got anything from GFEA? Okay, thank you. Board requests for future consideration. Do we have any requests from board members? Seeing none, let's move on to item 8C, which is school board norms. Bill, how did we do? Thank you. Let's move on to item 9, which is executive session. We will be moving into executive session to discuss negotiating strategies, primarily because we have several new board members. Do we need a motion and a second before we go into the session, correct? Cindy? Oh, okay, this is public, okay. No, we don't adjourn it because we'll come back and adjourn it, so. And I gotta turn this microphone on, and I always do it wrong because I'm colorblind, so. What? This one? Yeah, but. So, oh, okay. No, go ahead. Go ahead. It'll be recorded, but go ahead.
I didn't know whether to
Jump in. Thank you.
Just like the boys swimming team has their annual swimathon coming up this Saturday. Highly pushed for me to bring it up to the board. 80% of donations go to Special Olympics. 20% goes to our team to just for like some state stuff and stuff like that. Donations can be checks can be made out to GFPS, and just people who are willing to help, that can go to me, or you can bring it on Saturday. It would be at the Hislop. We'll swim for 8 hours. So it's a pretty big thing for us. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that. The board is going into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiating strategies for our ongoing negotiations. The legal authority for closing this portion of the meeting is North Dakota Century Code sections 15.1-16-22 and 44-04-19.1. At this time, I would ask for a motion to hold the executive session to discuss negotiating strategy or provide negotiating instructions which are currently being negotiated for which negotiations will be occurring in the immediate future, which is what the purpose is tonight. Can I get a motion? Okay, can I get a second? Second. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We will now ask the members of the public who are attending the meeting to leave the room. We anticipate adjourning the executive session and reconvening in the open portion of the meeting in about 45 minutes, but the only thing we'll do in the open portion of the meeting is adjourn, so there'll be nothing after that. So thank you. We'll take a moment to reconvene after we allow the public to leave.